Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast, part of the Minute Media Podcast Network. This season, it's all grit. I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players, gaining more insight on what makes this team go. The Detroit Lions are now in a new, grittier era, and we look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we look over the list of players set to become free agents for the Detroit Lions. We'll talk about any other coaching adjustments that have taken place and look at some of the Lions' happenings at the Pro Bowl, the Senior Bowl, and what to make of big-name players potentially available for trade. That and more. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
This is Corey Schlesinger, and you are listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
Joining me today is James Cook, the senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. James, good to have you here in a postseason episode.
Good to be here. Still looking forward to this season. I think it's going to be a very interesting offseason.
That it will be. And joining both James and I is Coach Jerry Angers, back from training himself up in the Upper Peninsula. He is a former Michigan High School Coach of the Year. He was Coach of the Week by the Detroit Lions, and he's working, folks, because he's a scouting and training director for Bull Rush Sports, and it's just about that time, Coach. Got to put that work in so that they can get looked at, right?
Oh, for sure. Nothing better than working with some guys, hoping them to answer their dreams, and then driving back south of the bridge and talk Lions football.
All right. Well, let's get into this, folks. Let's get into the Pro Bowl. We'll only be on this very briefly because it's not even a real game anymore. And when it was, that was a long, long time ago. Obviously, it's a skills competition with a flag football game at the end. They play it in Orlando these days, in between the Super Bowl and the NFC, AFC championship games. Guys, I remember when I was 14 or 15, on a random Saturday, it seemed in February, you'd stumble across this game on ESPN and forget it was even happening. And so that's probably why they got rid of it a number of years ago. But did either of you guys tune into this at all? James?
Not a bit.
All right. Coach, I know you were up training, so I'm presuming you have the same answer.
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it, some of the highlights and stuff like that. I went back on the NFL channel Monday or something like that, just to look at I wanted to see the Gibbs pick, and of course I watched Goff tear up the throwing, and it was kind of cool. I mean, they seem to be having a lot of fun doing it, so that's the best part. And I don't think there were any injuries.
Yeah, and that I think that's a big part of it, is the shift, right, of trying to be a game and try and make it a game when it's not a game as far as a football game goes, to just this fun type activity filled thing. The Lions had Jared Goff, Brian Branch. They had Decker, Fox, and Gibbs and Ragnow all there. As you said, Jared Goff showed how good he is again in another venue, right? Winning the quarterback competition, winning the MVP of the Pro Bowl. I caught some highlights as well, Coach. They were splattered all over social media, so that made it easy to pick up some of that. Branch had an interception. Jahmyr Gibbs had an interception, which I think he would have returned for a touchdown if half of the other team's sideline didn't come on the field to stop him.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fun event for fans to go to if you're in Florida or can get there, somewhat not too expensively, and you want to see some NFL stars just kind of doing some skills competitions. It reminds me of stuff you used to see on NBC on a Saturday afternoon, in the springtime. And so it kind of seems something like that, James.
Yeah, it's kind of like the combine almost, but for the actual NFL players, not guys who want to be NFL players. Kind of underwear Olympics-ish.
Yeah, combine
no
skill
pads.
stuff.
Yeah, no pads, just skill stuff. But
and an opportunity
Goff
for fans. Go ahead about Goff.
Oh, the one thing I did see was the Goff accuracy video of him winning that. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, it was fun to see that. And again, for fans in attendance, the opportunity to see some of their favorite players or favorite stars in an situation that's not high pressure for the players because they're not going to a game. They might be a little bit more relaxed, able to interact a little bit. All right, going from one bowl to the next. Let's jump right to the Senior Bowl. The American team defeated the national team. 22-19. It was like the final play of the game. Memphis quarterback Seth Hennigan hit TCU wide receiver Jack Beck for a game-winning touchdown, and that made it 22-19. This again is guys getting ready, getting looks for the NFL draft. Now, according to PFF, here are some risers, some guys you might want to keep an eye on. Offensive lineman Gray Zabel out of North Dakota State. He's the guy that's they think is going to play on the interior line of the NFL. He took snaps at center and guard, and they said he did really well against a talented defensive line group. They've got him on their PFF big board ranked at 41, and so there's more information on him, but he's someone to look at. Jack Beck, a wide receiver out of TCU, I just brought his name up. He's a guy who they have at number 56 overall. They said his route running ability looked good. He made several contested catches, and his willingness to compete in the run game also was on display, which, Coach, we know that's a big thing for Detroit Lions fans. We know that's what the receivers do here. One more, another big board guy was an edge guy, Shamar Stewart out of Texas A&M. He's 6'5", 281 pounds, and he comes in at number 20 on their big board, so he could be a first-round guy. Again, these are how they rank them overall, not what draft spot they're going to go in, because you know Mel Kiper has his like top 5 quarterbacks, and like the 5th quarterback might not go to like the 3rd or 4th round. So those are some guys that were getting some press. There's another edge guy, Mike Green out of Marshall, and who's actually number 11. And then a little further down, they had Mason Taylor, a tight end out of LSU. So again, just some guys to maybe keep an eye on, see what happens when the combine comes up, which will be actually at the end of February. A few guys that fell, Jalen Milroe, quarterback out of Alabama. They said he struggled in many aspects through the week. He finished on a positive note, they said, in his second half of the Thursday practice last week, but he was late on a lot of his throws, and he struggled with consistent ball placement. And so that accuracy is a big thing. There's another offensive lineman, Wyatt Millam from West Virginia, and he was a question mark coming in because, again, they look at these things and they overmeasure things, Coach. They're looking at like his arm length. And again, I've not played the game, but we've heard of guys the Lions have who didn't have certain measurables, and they've done more than just fine. So that's just a little taste of some of the risers and the fallers.
Buy 5 quarts of Castrol Edge Full Synthetic Motor Oil and get a $15 gift card after rebate, plus 2 times points at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Coach, you went down to this a couple years ago. What do you make of some of this stuff and the things that go on there? Can you kind of share your insights with the listeners?
Well, they're watching the drill work. A lot of the scouts that are there, they leave. They don't even watch the game. They're mostly, they want to see the one-on-ones, things like that. They want to see what they look like. They want to see them up close. They want to see how they bend. They want to look at them. Is their length good? Do they, especially offensive linemen, do they have long arms? Do they bend at the hips or bend at the waist? And the one-on-one stuff is, who's tougher than who? I mean, let's talk about Green. Okay, right? You brought Green up, didn't you? Oh my God, he is the best. He is the best pass rusher in the draft right now because he ran over. Who did he run over again? Oh, he ran over Cornley, right? Oregon's offensive lineman. Yep. So that blew up on
Green
social
out of Marshall.
media. Oh my God, we got to sign him right now. We got to trade 3 picks to get him. But nobody saw his second rep against Conley when Conley took him across the formation and body slammed him. Picked him off the ground and put him right down on the ground. So, again, it's social media, and they catch one of those things right away. It's just like, and I'm going to bring up JJ last year from Michigan. They were, oh my God, did you see that throw? But it was the 3rd time he made that throw. The first one went in the dirt. The next one went high. The next one was on target. So, take it with a grain of salt. And again, film don't lie. And they're just trying to match what they see in person to what they've seen on film. And then when the combine comes around, that's when they realize how fast they are in their underwear.
There you go. And again, looking at what's on film, that matters. It feels like the combine, Coach
Yeah.
James, is more like that's the player interview time where you learn so much more about the player, not so much just what they're doing on the field there, James, right? That's what the Lions seem to be, their approach.
A little bit, yeah. The teams that are coaching these players at the Senior Bowl get that opportunity, and the Lions have had that, a couple of the last few years. So they've gotten that kind of bonus, but obviously the Lions are not there this year as far as being the actual coaches on the field of the Senior Bowl, so they're not getting that this season. But yeah, the combine is kind of where you actually sit down with a lot of these guys. You do the medicals, you do all the measurements, all the testing, all that kind of stuff. But um, all these kind of things play into that whole resume that will come into the draft, though, with a player. So Green, Green went viral for that one hit, but he also had, supposedly a pretty good week overall.
Yes.
And I think he may have risen far enough where he's not going to be an option for the Detroit Lions, I think, with where they're picking. I think he's going to go before that now, as one of the prime rushers. I think maybe in the teens, something like that, where he was kind of a fringe or late first, early second, maybe type of guy. And I think he's played his way up a little bit already.
Coach?
And on that too, there's some of those guys that aren't even in the Senior Bowl that were in one of the other bowls or chose not to do those things. So I think there's a lot because yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I think this is a pretty good edge rush group out there. The Stewart kid, he flew up the Stewart, right? The one from Michigan. He had a good Senior Bowl that you really Jonas. I think it's Stewart's his last name, I believe. And then you take what did we read about Jack from Ohio State? He's pretty good. He's real good football. And again, number 11. The second coming of Parsons is from Penn State. He wasn't there, so yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I think you're right. I think he'll move up. But it's funny every year when you see these things, and then when the draft actually comes around, some of them are gone. So, but anyways,
Oh, for sure. And we'll get more information than we want once the combine comes up, and then we'll take a break for a little bit, and then it'll get crazy again right before the draft. So, all right, well let's transition over to something that involves a lot of names that a lot of our listeners know. Detroit Lions players who are now unrestricted free agents. The Lions have a lot of guys here. As many extensions as they made, there's a number of contracts that have come up. They have about 20, 21, 22 unrestricted free agents. And so they can work with these players. They can sign them, re-sign them at any time. Now, the free agency begins in early-ish March, around the 10th, 12th, I think the 12th of March. But here are the free agents who were starters at some point last season, guys. On defense, you had Marcus Davenport, you had Levi Onwuzurike, Derek Barnes, Carlton Davis, and Ifeatu Melifonwu, Iffy. On defense, two guys, Tim Patrick and Kevin Zeitler. Those are the starters of this list. Let's talk about them first, because those are going to be the guys that people saw play, had the bigger impact or some of the biggest impact. I guess there's two guys on offense. So let's just start with offense. Kevin Zeitler on the offensive line, Tim Patrick at wide receiver. James, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on these two guys and whether the Lions should bring them back or what parameters around?
Yeah, I think they should bring Zeitler back. And I think it appears he's pretty willing to come back too. They're probably going to have to maybe give him a little bit of bump up from last season, what he got, which I think was 6, I think is for the 1-year deal that he signed. So they may have to bump him up a little bit to 7 or 8 or something like that, but that's not bad. There's already some talking heads out there talking about how they might try to redo Graham Glasgow's deal, with the possibility of him kind of being a swing inside get backup guy at all the 3 of the positions and have Mahogany start. Whether that happens or not, we'll see. But
all right, Coach, what about you on Zeitler, the offensive line?
sign him. I think he had a great year. He is, he's getting up there in age. It doesn't seem like he fell back at all. He's 35, right? Going to be 36. We're probably going to be able to get him cheaper I think we'll get him a little bit cheaper than some of the other guys. Maybe we'll sign him to a 2 year, and kind of spread it out a little bit. So I just he's just a great football player. I think he fits well. I think him and Sewell are on the same page. And again, his numbers, you can you look at PFF, whatever numbers. We watch enough of the games to realize he's a really good football player. And why if it's not broke, don't fix it. Now there's a couple good guys out there, but they're going to cost us a whole lot of money, I think. So I got to believe they're gonna keep him around unless they don't think the rookie can play left guard.
Yeah, I want to see Zeitler come back because you want to keep that offensive line as strong as possible. And even if Mahogany ascends the way people are expecting him to, great. That gives you that much more depth. And you've got some other guys that you're hoping to get a little bit more out of as well. And the one thing we didn't mention, and I got to bring this up right away just so we're all aware of this, is we've seen Lions coaches get new jobs and take coaches with them. Well, with Ben Johnson and AG being head coaches, you guys, this opens up another market for all of these free agents. They'll have other teams, the Jets and the Bears, interested in these players at a different level than would exist if, Ben and Aaron were still with the Lions. So I think that's also something we have to realize. Some of these guys will sign with the Bears or the Jets very potentially. I mean, remember when Matt Patricia came over and we started signing New England Patriot players? I mean, stuff like that is just naturally going to happen. But yeah, that offensive line's got to stay strong. Tim Patrick, I'm a huge fan. I really want him back for, this year, he played a full season. First time since he played since 2021. And so you could even see him do even better next year, even though he's a year older, having this whole season under his belt. Coach, what are your thoughts on Tim Patrick?
Oh, I mean, I love TP. I think he just kept getting better and better and better. And, he showed, what athleticism he has for a big guy. He blocks well on the edge. He's the kind of guy we're looking at. He's proven himself. And to have him actually doing OTAs in the off season with us, it'll make it be that much better. I think the other thing too is Goff and him started to get a pretty good relationship and chemistry going. So yeah, I think he's another one. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that they talk about, but again, I want to touch base on two things for you guys to think about. On the average, only 50%, 56% of the team is the same the next year. Okay, from one year to the next, 56%. That's on
a
the
lot
average.
of turnover.
Yep, that's on the average in the NFL. We were at 65% last year. I just figured those numbers out. So,
Nice.
so we're above the board. So I think that's one of the things guys want to stay here, and they may forego some money. Okay, they may forego some money to stay in our building. I think we go back to the Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn's thing. Does Derek Barnes loves Aaron Glenn, my favorite coach of all times. Are they going to overbid it? And does he say, I'd rather have the money than have the shot at the Super Bowl? The guy's coming off an injury. So I think those are a lot of things, again, Aaron Glenn's coming after this guy and coming after this guy and coming after this guy. Where did he say that? I never even heard in one of his press conferences. These guys must have coffee with him in the morning, and the same thing with Ben Johnson. So, my point on that is I think on the average, we're above the average at 65%. And they say like one team a year will keep 70%. And then going to the second year, it's 35%. I didn't even go back that far. So I think those guys that are those free agents are going to stay with us unless we just try to lowball them to, so bad that they just say, I can't do that.
All right. Well, Tim Patrick for you, James. Tim Patrick actually, I think, played basically at the minimum last year for us, being a practice squad guy. He could actually cost the team more money in salary cap this year. But is Tim Patrick a guy you want to see them bring back?
Yeah, I think so. And like you said, I think that it's probably going to be more money than what he made last year if he comes back. Just being a wide receiver, having played a full season, stayed healthy, been productive. He fits the culture. He's a blocker. So he fits in so many ways that I think it's kind of a no-brainer to try to bring him back. The market may determine something else. Some other team may come in and say, hey, we're going to offer him $6 million a season. And then at that point, Brad Holmes is probably going to say, I don't know about that.
Yeah, we saw that happen last year with Josh Reynolds, where the Broncos came in and offered all this more money. And coach, you talk about this thing is, what do you want? Because Tyreek Hill got paid a lot of money to go to Miami, but he ain't winning Super Bowls, and the team he left is. And so, I think players kind of look for that happy medium where can you make the most amount of money, but also, and we'll get to Myles Garrett later, you want a chance to win at some point. So as much as the Lions want everybody back, though, you guys, salary cap becomes a thing. It is real. And even though it keeps going up. And so on that defensive side, Marcus Davenport's the injury question. Do you want the Lions to bring him back, knowing all that? And then look at the other guys. Carlton Davis is going to cost you some money. I'm not sure what Derek Barnes is going to cost. Coach already alluded to that a little bit. Levi, you could probably get back affordably. And Iffy, maybe as well, because he's had some injuries as well. James, let's start with you. Those 5 guys on defense, I don't know that the Lions get all 5 of them back as starters. But what are your thoughts, and who are the guys that you're pulling for more?
I doubt that they do get all 5 of those guys back. Maybe 3 of them. Carlton Davis on the free agent market is going to command decent money. I don't know that Brad Holmes is going to want to pay that. It depends on what the numbers come in at. Obviously, I mean, he was already making, I think, 14 this season, so I don't see it going much, even if there's a bidding war over 20 for him, given his age and stuff. So I think he's maybe a 50-50 proposition at this point. And if he leaves, then he's going to leave for a decent sized contract, and the Lions will get a comp pick out of it.
Good point.
That's a good a thing. And how much they try to retain him might also say what they think the potential for Ennis Rakestraw to be a contributor next year. So if they think he's ready or not. Davenport, I think that they'll try to bring him back on a very cheap incentive-laden deal. Given that if he comes back and he can stay healthy, he's a guy who can definitely help you on the defensive line. We saw the very limited time that he did play with the Lions. He was pretty effective while he was out there. Levi, I think, is going to be another guy that I think is going to be priced out of what the Lions are going to want to pay for a backup defensive tackle. I mean, somebody who started on a necessity quite a bit last season, but in a perfect world is a backup rotational defensive tackle for you at this point. And I think somebody sees him as more than that, and the Lions are probably going to lose him in free agency. Somebody's going to offer him a pretty decent 2 or 3 year contract for $30 million total or something, And I think that's more than Holmes is going to want to pay, because he is a defensive tackle who has some pass rush ability, who can play the run. He's versatile, so he can fit into a lot of defenses, and a lot of defensive coordinators can use him. So that comes down, and again, to whether Holmes wants to pay that much for him, and how well we think players are coming along, like Pascal, and if they think they can get something out of Broderick Martin last year, even though he's a different kind of defensive tackle.
For sure. And then Iffy in the secondary, you want to see him back?
I wouldn't mind seeing him back, but I think he's one of the guys that I think Aaron Glenn is going to really target. Him and Barnes, I think, will be the 2 that Glenn will really target, and then to a lesser extent Levi. And Carlton Davis. I mean, he'll be looking at all of those guys depending on what the numbers turn out to be. I think that the Jets will be in on all 4 of those guys to one extent or another. But I think
because the Jets are going to try and win all their games 3-0 next year, right? I mean, the Jets defense is already loaded, so they get a few of these guys. That Jets defense could be incredible next year. But yeah, you're right. I think Aaron Glenn, he knows these guys, so he's going to pull for any hole he has, right, James?
He's gonna want to get some of his guys in on the Jets, to build the team in his vision, and he knows what he's getting in these guys, so he's gonna want those guys to build his style of team.
Coach, Marcus Davenport's a guy that a lot of people have dismissed. I agree with James. If you get him at the veteran minimum, there's no risk. It's a low risk, high reward potential thing for if the guy can stay healthy, he can contribute. But Coach, you've seen all these guys on tape a lot. Obviously, numbers play a lot with a guy like Carlton Davis. He's in line for the biggest contract out of anybody. Right price, right player, right location. Who are the guys that you're hoping the Lions bring back for the right fits?
Well, I think Davenport's one of them. Davenport's had an injury. He's had an injured career. This past year, he got injured early, but it was a dirty play. Okay, it was a dirty play. He got injured on a dirty play. But we won't get into that. So I think that's kind of the same thing with CD. He had a broken jaw, another freak accident. So, but I would like to see Davenport back, and I think the Lions would at a decent cost. He's a great guy to play left side, right side, opposite Hutch. If we end up getting somebody on free agent market to go opposite Hutch, then we got some depth, and we can rest him a little bit. And then then that leads into Levi and leads into Pascal playing in one position and not playing in a couple different positions, learn a couple different things. So I would definitely like to see him back. I think if he's one of those ones that because of his injuries, they may not put a whole lot of money on him. Also, if we didn't need him out of necessity because of all the other injuries, how much playing time would he have had the last 4 or 5 weeks? He started at safety, but Branch had to move down in the box because Carlton Davis was out. We had to move Amik Robinson out to the corner. Okay, you want to keep going on and on. And,
Right.
So, and again, here's the thing and again, Barnes, I think, is going to come back. I think he loves that linebacker core. Here's the deal with Barnes. Who does he love? AG? Who does he see the most? Shepard. And Shepard's his position coach. I'm just saying, and now he's the DC. So losing him in that situation, I think we got a good shot. But again, if those guys throw a ton of money at him, he may be one of those guys that decides to come back. So I just think that's the biggest thing. And here's one thing to think about too. If they're going to save money and not spend it on CD because they think Rickstraw, like James had alluded to, that Rickstraw might be there. Well, Rickstraw is a rookie. Really, do we really want a rookie starting at corner with a second year starting at the other corner? Well, the money we save might go to a new D lineman, might go to a draft pick, and might go to a free agent. So that is going to determine which way they go with CD. And I think if they're going to go D-line wise, CD's gone, and I'd like to have him back, but I think Amik can play that outside corner too.
Yeah, they've got Amik. They signed him to a 2-year deal, and you're right. Rakestraw is basically going to be a rookie again next year, an advanced rookie, but still a rookie at that. And Arnold will hopefully have taken a good step forward. But you're right. Is that money going to go to the secondary, or is it going to go to the defensive line, or even somewhere else? And so, Coach, I really like the fact that you broke down the percentage of roster turnover, because there is a big roster turnover from year to year. It was amazing how many starters the Lions brought back in 2024 from 2023. Okay, but as we saw this year, it's not just the starters that play a big role. The depth guys are huge. So on offense, there's fewer guys on offense. You've got wide receiver Allen Robinson, offensive lineman Dan Skipper, Nathan Muti, offensive guard, and Teddy Bridgewater, which, I think that's kind of just, he's there because he fits the category. But Teddy Bridgewater is leaving to go coach high school football, and who knows, maybe the same option will be back. Coach, to start with you on these guys, Robinson, Skipper, and Muti. What are your thoughts on those guys? You tell me.
Well, I think Skipper's Skipper. He's our dog, man. He's the one that gets the most cheers. He caught a touchdown, guys. We can't get rid of him. Can't get rid of a 6'9", 390-pound, whatever he is. He's a freaking monster, and I think he just fits well in there. I think Skipper's one of those guys that's just happy. Yeah, does he want a big payday? He spent 6 years on practice squad. So I just don't see him leaving. I think they're gonna offer him. I think maybe they'll put some incentive things in there if he catches another touchdown pass. Who knows? But I think they're gonna keep him. The other guys are kind of, who's Robinson? He's probably gone. I think that's another one. And so who was the fourth? I missed. What was the fourth one? I'm sorry.
Muti.
Oh, Muti.
Offensive guard. Yeah.
Yeah. Again, with here's another one that how bad does he want to be here, and is somebody going to throw a ton of money out? But he developed pretty well, so I think that's the thing is and those are going to be minimum contracts. Like we said earlier, it's all about CD's contracts, one that's going to hit the most unless we go get a free agent.
For sure. James, anything on the offense there?
Yeah, no, well, Muti already re-signed.
Oh,
I think on a 1 year deal.
Oh,
He
okay.
was the guy who supposedly last year looked really good in camp and then got hurt in camp and never played at all during the season. Like he was a guy that looked like was going to make the roster last season. So the staff really likes him. I think I agree with Jerry that the skipper is kind of a given that they're going to try to bring him back. And Robinson, I don't think will be reassigned. Bridgewater the same. I think he'll go back to coaching in high school. So the offense should be pretty set from last year. I mean, overall, really.
Makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of guys on defense now because, well, we had a lot of people on our team on defense this year due to all those injuries. So, we already talked. We'll just hit the backups here. We got Al Qadim Muhammad on the edge, John Kaminsky, Jonah Williams, Pat O'Connor, Kyle Pecco, Ben Neiman, Ezekiel Turner, Kendall Vildor, Khalil Dorsey, Emmanuel Mosley, and Michael Badgley. I threw a bunch of names out. The listeners probably aren't able to remember all of them, whatnot. Who are the few guys you would like to see the Lions bring back of this group? Who are the guys that you're like, man, I'd like to see them give another shot? Or someone you like to say, it's time to move on from, James?
I think that they'll probably bring back Vildor to have a veteran corner there, especially if they let if Davis goes somewhere else in free agency. He gives them, another veteran, on the kind of the back end of your depth chart at corner. The same thing with Khalil Dorsey, who is also a nice return option for them. And neither of those guys is going to be expensive, so they may as well bring them back. I think John Kaminsky is basically the Dan Skipper of the defense. The coaches love him.
As does our coach.
Yeah, and so I think he's going to be a guy that they'll bring back. Pat O'Connor showed some flashes last year, so I think he'll be somebody who'll be pretty reasonable to re-sign, unless somebody comes in and gives him a much bigger offer or something like that. And I think that they'll re-sign Muhammad. I think it's more likely that they re-sign Muhammad than Onwuzurike. He shouldn't cost a ton of money, or anything, and he was pretty productive in the time that he played. So I think that he's a guy that'll be back. As far as the other backups, like Ben Neiman, I think he's a guy that I think could be back on a 1 year deal to be, a special teams backup linebacker, maybe Ezekiel Turner too. Quan Alexander, they probably let go. Michael Badgley, I think obviously they let go. Jonah Williams, probably they don't make him an offer, and maybe he comes back at right before camp or something like that if he needs somebody else. And Kyle Pecco kind of depends on if they want a defensive tackle to sit in there for a few games before McNeil comes back or not. But I think they can address that in other places.
Okay. Coach, you want to weigh in on a few of these guys? I'm sure Kaminsky's at the top of your list. I saw you celebrating when James would mention his name. We know your appreciation for that guy.
yeah, we don't even have to talk anymore. Just bring Kaminsky back. He could. He's like the Bears. He's like Mike Ditka. If we just had Kaminsky, we could beat anybody. I'm just telling you, the guy's that good. Yeah, I think Kaminsky will be back. Again, a lot of these guys those guys that miss the season because of injuries, if they come back to where they can produce, they're going to run with them because they're going to be hungry. I think that's something and Kaminsky's one of those guys. Was he on the bubble last year? I don't know. But I think he's a blue collar Dan Campbell guy. I like the Muhammad thing that James said. I think he had a great year. I know Neiman does a great job on special teams and makes plays, and he's a great backup. Pecco, I think, is gone. He was a Williams guy. They brought him back because he had played for Williams. I'd read some stuff on there, but again, if they can fit these guys in the 90 man and try to keep them around, I feel bad for Mosley. He just never, the injury bug just took his basically took his career away. And Pat O'Connor, again, another injured guy. He was playing well for us. Is he a depth piece? But again, that's going to determine what we do on the free agent market and what we can pull from. But like we already talked, so those guys I think are pretty shaky. I agree with the Vildor thing. Keep them around.
Yeah, again, we know how much hate there has been out there for Vildor, but that's a guy I'm going to be like, bring this guy back, because find a guy that far down your depth chart on any roster that plays that well. It gives you that type of effort and contribution. Yeah. When you're getting down to fourth, fifth string, things look a lot different, especially with other things around you as well. Emmanuel Mosley, potential unrealized due to injury. It's unfortunate. I don't see him back. But, I'd like to see Dorsey and Vildor back in the secondary. It'll be big to keep an eye on, especially the starters, the guys who have the opportunity for more money and what they're willing to do. And hopefully they've learned from Jamal Williams that they're talking with their agent, because I don't remember the price difference, or I don't know if we actually fully knew the price difference between what the Saints paid Jamal Williams the last 2 years or what the Lions were offering him the last 2 years. But I know which place was more fun to play in the last 2 years. I think there's no doubt about that one. And so you might see some guys telling their agents, hey, get me in this neighborhood and let's move in. Let's just stay here. I don't want to have to relocate. And, you can relocate and get your money, but you might not get everything else you want. And so that's one thing you got to be aware of. So, all right, now we've got some guys that aren't just unrestricted free agents. We've got 5 restricted free agents. And this was Brock Wright last season, right? He was a restricted free agent. The 49ers made an offer. The Lions matched it. And good for Brock Wright. He got a pay raise by doing that. The Lions have 5 guys here. Anthony Pittman, Coyote Awashika, Miles Adams, Craig Reynolds, and Shane Zylstra. I'm still a fan of Coyote Awashika based on the playoff game 2 years ago against Tampa when he came in and he just played really well. I would like to see him back for depth. I know he didn't get many starts or if any, no starts, I don't think, but he did get some playing time a little bit, I think, this year, but others did make some moves over him. He's still a very solid depth piece for me from the outside looking in. And I love what Craig Reynolds can do for that depth spot. I would expect to see those 2 guys back. Anthony Pittman came back late in the season. Coach, I'll start with you on these guys. What are you seeing out of these guys, these restricted free agents?
Yeah, I don't think Zylstra's going to be around. I read some stuff on the 12 personnel concept. They don't use it as much. The new OC doesn't use it as much, even though he does use part of it. And then again, it's gonna determine what Fraley makes decisions on the run game. But that's where the skipper thing comes in. They can use skipper in that. He's already shown he can catch passes, so he can be our 13 personnel guy if we have to. So I think Cody. I think they'll keep him again. That backup at offensive line. What's going to happen. He's been in the system 3 years now. And, and he did some good stuff for us. And I think he's going to develop more. Adams, probably gone. Reynolds, definitely, because of the special teams. And how many big plays has he made for us? How many splash plays has he made for us? How many first downs has he made for us? So I think, but again, are they going to price herself out? So that's kind of how I see that with Pittman. They brought him back for a reason, for linebacker depth. But again, what's going to happen from that? Does Trevor, be kept over him now? Or, some of the other guys, are they going to keep some of those other linebackers on free agents?
Yeah, and again, they have to choose if they're going to put a tender on any of these guys. And James, you're not seeing that, are you?
No, I don't think that they put the tender on any of these guys. That bumps them up to at least, I think, $3.2 million a season. I think that they like some of these guys and can bring a couple of them back. But I don't think it'll be at that much. I think it'll be more like, league minimum type contracts. I think Awashika is a guy they'll maybe try to bring back. Maybe Zylstra if it's league minimum. Possibly Pittman as a depth linebacker and special teams guy, and possibly Reynolds. Although I think that's maybe a position this year where they try to upgrade is that third running back this season.
Yeah, Craig Reynolds. I mean, if Sione Vaki elevates to the 3 spot, Craig Reynolds could be your 4th guy / practice squad guy, which then that's kind of the position Jamar Jefferson's been holding, and it could just kind of have a push down effect with that. And who knows what Ben Johnson thinks of Shane Zylstra, but maybe you see him in a Chicago Bears uniform. I mean, again, that's where some of these depth guys have new markets available to them if Detroit doesn't work out, because our parts of our roster are much deeper than some of these other rosters that have other coaches on them now. And these guys know some of these Lions players. So there's that possibility. All right. So those were restricted free agents. Now we have exclusive rights free agents. And there's 5 here. On the offensive side, you've got Michael Neese and you've got Connor Galvin. And on the defensive side, you've got Maurice Norris, you've got Mitchell Agude, and you've got Trevor Nowaski. And I think, James, you said somebody's already signed, right?
Yeah, Morris Norris already re-signed for next year on I think a 1-year deal. He was somebody they brought up towards the end of the season to the 53 when they had some injuries after the other Joseph got released.
Oh, yep, Brandon.
Yeah. So I think you'll see probably most of these guys get brought back. Exclusive rights free agents are basically freebie spots. They can bring you back at a league minimum contract for 1 year, and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. So I think that all these guys will be either practice squad or making the 53 in Nowaski's case, I think, next year for sure. So. All of these guys were on the practice squad most of the season, aside from Nowaski, who was on the 53 pretty much, I believe, the whole year.
He was, yep.
He's like a free space with the exclusive rights free agent tag that they can put on him for a year.
All right, Coach, anything to add on what James said there about bringing all these guys back?
Nope.
All right, James, you mentioned there was a flurry of futures contracts already put out. You want to go over that? Just again, remind the listeners, what does that mean to be signed to a futures contract?
It's basically just that it's a 1-year league minimum contract for next season. There's like no guaranteed money in it. So it's like an invitation to camp next year where they can guarantee that you're coming to camp next year. But you're not guaranteed to make any signing bonus money. You're not guaranteed to make the roster or make the practice squad or anything. You're just, signing up early for practice for off season and training camp next year. So the guys that they signed to futures contracts were quarterback Jake Fromm, wide receiver Tom Kennedy, offensive tackle Jamarco Jones, who we saw play in 1 or 2 games up from the practice squad last year. Center Kingsley Eguakon, who was one of their undrafted free agents they paid a lot of money for. Last season, guy who has a lot of potential, I think. Defensive tackle Chris Smith, who was up and down from practice squad a little bit this season. Edge rusher Isaac Ukwu, who came up, I think, from the practice squad once, maybe twice. Last season, linebacker Abraham Beauplan, who looked pretty good in the spring or the preseason last year, and then was somebody that once they started getting some injuries at linebacker, they brought back in. Deron Gilbert at linebacker, Stanley Thomas Oliver, who was up on the roster for the last week of the season in the playoff game. And then,
yep.
And then safeties Lauren Strickland and Eric Hallett were all guys that were signed to futures contracts. Each team gets like about, I think, a dozen of these.
Okay. So yeah, far down the depth chart is where a lot of these guys are at, but some do have potential to elevate from that. Tom Kennedy plays an essential role on that practice squad, and we even saw him elevated for game days a couple of times. Okay, coaching moves. There's been a couple more since we did our last episode. Tanner Engstrand has left the building. He's headed to the Jets. The Lions got David Shaw to replace him. Coach, I mean, I remember David Shaw from his Stanford days and whatnot, and I know he's had more experience since then. I was excited about it, but where you took my excitement to a whole nother level. So tell the listeners why you're so excited about this move.
Well, I just think what he's done, he's such a great leader. He's his players love him. He's been on so many different staffs with so much knowledge, that he's learned from some of the best. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think it's when wasn't he like a specialist assistant to somebody last year? Was it the Bears, or was he last year? anyways, I thought it was a waste.
He was with the Denver Broncos
Denver
last year
Broncos,
as a
you're right.
senior personnel
Yes,
exec.
that's right. And then which leads me to that he was with Morton there. So they know each other from there. Again, he's with Peyton. Again, who Peyton was with Dan Campbell was with, and Morton was, and so you're getting that tree. It's not a one branch. There's a whole lot of leaves and trees and stuff falling out. And I just think he's doing, and he may be the one that can talk Morton into running 13 personnel. So let's go. Because I used to love watch Stanford when he was coaching, and they'd line up and they bring all the big bodies out and say, we're just going to run you over. And we saw that a few times with the Lions. So I think that is a huge hire, just because he's going to be. I think he's going to be a player's coach, and not that none of these other guys aren't. I've heard Morton's pretty hardcore, but he's detailed, and his players respect him, which is good. But you also need those guys that are kind of, that in between guy that they can speak with. And I think Shaw will have the ears of all the other coaches, which is what Dan Campbell has said in the past, that all coaches have a say in everything they do, and this guy will have a lot to say, and it'll be worth listening to.
Awesome insight there. James, what did you want to add?
Yeah, well, I did a little bit of looking at a little bit of video from 2022 on the Lions offense to kind of see what the difference was when Morton was there and had his hands in it then. So the one thing I noticed that was different is that they put Jared Goff in a lot of rollouts that season. So the teams didn't know where the pocket was going to be. They couldn't just send their defensive ends and say he's going to be right there, which was kind of more prevalent, I think, under Ben Johnson, where he just kept him in the pocket more. I mean, he would move around in the pocket, but they rolled him out quite a bit to the left, to the right, a lot of different things, and kind of used his mobility a little bit more that season. So I don't know. I wonder if you're going to see a little bit more of that this season and coming up.
James, did you just say they used his mobility?
Yeah, he said it. I heard it.
Mm-hmm.
He ran a 4.840, guys. He's not slow. He ran a 4.840 on his pro day. He's not slow.
Sorry to interrupt,
slow.
James. Keep going.
He just doesn't like to run it, because
Right.
I wouldn't either if I was built like him. I'm not going to let 250-pound linebackers hit me on a regular basis.
Agreed.
And the other thing is that maybe we'll even see a pass on first down next season.
Oh, let's not get too crazy. You just talked about Jared Goff and his mobility, and now you're talking about passing on first down. Well, anyway, the offense to defense, there's going to be some changes. There'll be some adjustments, some personnel, some coaching, a combination of a lot of that. All right. Now we have to talk about a topic way earlier than we thought we'd talk about. We don't have to, but we're going to. And it's trade talk. And who says no? Now, no, don't stop listening, folks. I'm not going to give you a proposal and say who says no, because this, I don't know what to compare this to, guys, but I just say it's annoying. It's like they throw stuff at the wall and see what will stick. Who says no? And it's all just clickbait. And that's one thing we definitely go against. We want to be like, hey, let's at least have some articulate conversations about this. And we could be off base and we could be wrong, but we're not going to intentionally put something up there that's going to infuriate you just to get you to respond. All right? Because there are some really dumb offers being put out there. But the two names that have started getting the jibber jabber going is Myles Garrett and Cooper Kupp. Now, Cooper Kupp's apparently on the market. Myles Garrett wants to be on the market, and we'll get to that. Others are going to hit the market potentially, trade or free agency. Let's start with Myles Garrett. He's the big one. Actually, I'm going to start with Cooper Kupp here. They say they want to trade Cooper Kupp. I can't imagine anybody trading for Cooper Kupp. He's due $20 million this year, basically $20 million in 26. He's 31 years old. Since he had that record season in 2021, he has not played more than 12 games in a season. Who would give up draft picks to pay a guy that much? Now, I have heard the Rams are willing to pay part of that salary, which they'd have to be if they're going to get a draft pick. Otherwise, you got to give someone a draft pick to take that. Otherwise, people are going to just wait for him to get cut. James, what's your initial thought on the idea of anybody trading for Cup? And what are your thoughts on the Lions doing it? Because that's one team everyone links the Lions to everybody, it seems. So run with this.
Yeah, I don't see them being I guess I'm just gonna say no. Who says no?
Yeah.
I say no. Uh,
Ditto.
for that amount of money, that amount of cap hit, the Lions don't have the flexibility enough to do that and to sign the guys that they want to re-sign. Um, and have to give up a draft pick too. I mean, unless it's like a total Brock Osweiler trade where they give up a second round pick to get rid of him. Like remember what the I think it was
Yep.
the Texans had to do with the Browns years ago. Um, then I don't see how there's going to be much of a market for him. I mean, he's an older receiver now. Unfortunately, he's still productive when he plays, but he's gotten pretty kind of injury prone the last few years. He's he's Tim Patrick, but way more expensive.
Yeah, and I see him going to a team that needs a receiver bad. We could use another receiver, a young one, to develop. We have St. Brown and JMO. I mean, we have Raymond. We've got Tim Patrick. So I don't see this I don't even know why people are making this as a connection of the dots here, Coach. Cup's, he's been great in the past. He's been injured lately. That contract makes 0 sense for the Lions. What are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Okay. Well, T. Higgins is a free agent too, so I think we should go get him also. And we'll have Saint, Cup, Higgins, JMO. Our tight end's pretty good. I mean, there's got to be somebody
Yeah.
else out there we can go after. It's just would Cup fit? Cup would fit in our offense because he fits in the Rams offense. He's a blocking guy, but that's a lot of money to pay for a guy who's not an every down player. When we have Tim Patrick out there, would I like to see Cup? Yeah, I'd love to see Cup at about $5,000 or $5 million a year or $6 million a year. I mean, the Lions, they're going to make that. Here's the thing: is that some of these people think about how much do we want to lose on our cap money? How much do we want to lose on the money that we have? We're sitting in pretty good shape. We still have to go out and get some free agents. The other point is we like to extend, which we will probably extend 3 or 4 players this year, so that when their contracts are up, we're saving $5 million a year because we didn't wait to sign them then, just like last year. So, it's Brad Holmes and them will do their money. So yeah, the Cup thing, whatever. No.
Yeah. I mean, a team like Baltimore or Buffalo, I mean, I don't know their salary situations. I know Buffalo didn't have much cash. It's a great spot to go to. Doesn't work for the Lions. Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to having them on our team if you can get them for that really inexpensive price. That's not actually going to happen. But now let's turn to the bigger name, Myles Garrett. Okay. He wants out of Cleveland. He's 29 years old. He's got 2 years left on his deal. I'm not going to get into all the specifics, but Cleveland would take a pretty big cap hit, first off, if they traded him, like $36 million, I believe. And also, Cleveland said they're not interested in trading him. Okay. Now, he's due to make $20 million in 2025 and $25 million in 2026. Those are not bad numbers, James. They're not bad numbers. But I've heard he wants a new contract, like Hassan Reddick wanted a new contract. And so are you willing to do that? And again, Coach, I don't think this is as crazy of a conversation as the Jared Goff for Lamar Jackson thing we had to deal with 2 years ago. That was ludicrous, okay?
I don't know.
Now, some of the offers out there, and I'm going to let you bring the one up you saw because that is ludicrous, yes. But the Lions might make some sort of a move on the defensive line. There's that possibility, okay? But some of it's just crazy talk. Coach, do you want to get that crazy talk going?
Oh my God. Well, let's talk about clickbait. First of all, these guys that are doing clickbait, if have anything associated or they're writing for Woodway Sports or any of our Detroit sports things, maybe we should maybe sit there for 10 seconds before we open our mouths and think about what was going to spill out. We've already talked about every week we talk about, hey, we're going to move Sewell over to here because you never move two places. You never move a person to cover an injury because then you have another person in another spot that you have to worry about. So that 2-for-1. Trading Myles Garrett for Hutchinson. Let me say that again. Trading Myles Garrett for Hutchinson, even up. Braylon Edwards, where did you go to school? Who played at the school that you went to? And why would you even say something like that? First of all, aren't we looking for edge pressure to help Hutchinson? Well, okay, so now we got the edge pressure to help Hutchinson, but Hutchinson isn't even on the field with us anymore because we traded him to Cleveland. It's just some people think before you open your mouth, and you're supposedly a football player that knows what you're talking about. I'm sorry. I just have a major concern with that. You know what? Hendrickson's a free agent for Cincinnati too, and he wanted a trade last year. So maybe we could trade. Let's trade Sewell for him. Okay. So then we'll have Hendrickson and we'll have Myles Garrett, but we won't have Sewell or Hutchinson. And then the other thing is those extended guys, we're going to lose one or two of those guys. You want to lose a branch? Do you want to? So anyways, as you can see, that one just about put me over the edge. I actually did not look at X for about 2 days because I could not read that stuff anymore.
You know, the only thing crazier than that take was Mike Tannenbaum wanting to trade a bunch of first-round picks and Jahmyr Gibbs for Max Crosby.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah.
Like, why even put that out there? That made no sense to begin with. Why you put it out there? For clickbait.
Yeah.
James, I knew Coach was going to get riled up. I didn't quite think that much, but good for you, Coach. You held it because I know you wanted to take it a whole nother notch higher. But that's the thing, you know. Even take the trade of a player out because all of these seem to have players in. We're going to have to sign Hutchinson to an extension soon. Mm-hmm. What about Kirby Joseph, Jamison Williams? Like, if you bring on somebody who is going to require that much more salary cap space, who are you not going to bring back? And James, you know, it was 6-7 years ago, Khalil Mack was traded. He was only 27 then, to the Bears. And Oakland got 2 first-round picks and like a third-round pick and then a couple other things got swapped back and forth. But that's a lot to give up. And this is what like Coach and I talked about with Lamar. You want to give up multiple first-round picks to pay somebody top dollar. That's a double whammy. You pay someone top dollar as a free agent or you draft somebody high. But what are your thoughts on the Lions either – be it Myles Garrett type stuff or any big name defensive player that's not currently with the team?
Yeah, I think Myles Garrett's a pipe dream. You know, for the Browns to take the cap hit that they would have to take to trade him, they're going to have to get a sweet deal, multiple first round picks, and probably other picks or players to get back. Brad Holmes is not in the market of doing that. He's in the market of being on the other end of that trade. That's what built this franchise, was being on the other end of that trade with the Matthew Stafford deal. He's not going to flip sides now. So I don't think that this is something that's going to happen. I mean, I think that Max Crosby would be more likely than Myles Garrett, and I don't think Max Crosby is likely, even though I don't think it's out of the question.
That makes sense. Coach, go ahead.
Yeah, and another thing too on that, Cleveland's in very, 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 very rough shape. We all know that because of the quarterback deal a few years back. And so, when they say that they don't want to trade him or they're not going to trade him, do you want a disgruntled best player on your team in the locker room, for one? For two, when they say that we're not trading him, they want somebody to call up and say, hey, how about we give you a first rounder this year, a first rounder next year, a third rounder this year, and a fourth rounder the following year? Because really, if you look at it, Cleveland needs draft picks and they need to cut some costs. I mean, they're going to have to cut some costs on that. So, if they're going to hold up, if he screams and, enough about, I want out of here, I want out of here, I want out of here, eventually they're going to have to give him his wishes. Eventually they're going to have to give him his wishes. But right now everybody's playing a little checkers. And with that, and Cleveland is, but Cleveland's probably looking, you know what, that's a lot of money if we can get rid of that somehow, where everybody else takes it away and things like that. And but it's, I think it's a pipe dream. I think he hit it on, and hey, if it works out, that's why Brad Holmes is executive of the year again.
For sure. James, what do you want to add?
2 years in a row. I think we should point out to the listeners how much Jerry held back on that and what he really wanted to say about Braylon Edwards, and that he did not. I think his tongue is probably bleeding right now.
Yeah, I didn't even have to hit the mute button. I mean, I was on standby waiting for that thing just in case.
Oh.
But you guys, all right, so we're saying, okay, this doesn't make a lot of sense, but there are some big names out there, or medium-sized names even.
Mm-hmm.
Here's my question for you both. I'm hearing people say the Lions Super Bowl window's open now. You need to make a move. Now, we heard Brad Holmes say how hard it was to trade midseason for a defensive lineman, and how hard it was to get Zadarius Smith. I mean, I'm pretty excited to see Zadarius Smith and Aiden Hutchinson together. I'm excited for that combination. But, you brought up a guy like Trey Hendrickson. Like, someone like that as a free agent is much more likely of a move than trading for somebody. Because if you have to give up 2 first-round picks for Myles Garrett and pay all that money, you could just take next year's first-round pick, package it with this year's first-round pick, and move way up in the first round. Now, again, I'm not saying you're going to find Myles Garrett in the first round. You're not likely. He's a generational type talent. But you could still find a pretty darn good player, and you get them on the rookie salary scale for 4 years. And so those are the things that the Lions have done. And everyone's looking to see, who are we going to bring and who are we going to bring in? It's also, who are we bringing back? We signed Aleem McNeil to an extension. We signed David Montgomery to an extension. So we're bringing back a lot of homegrown players. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't bring in some extra help on the defense, but this window thing, we want to keep it open as long as possible. Some teams manage to keep it open for a good amount of time because they let their defensive back go to the Titans and let the Titans pay a ton of money. Or they let that wide receiver go to Miami and pay him a ton of money, and they keep building through the draft. I'm not saying you can't sacrifice a draft pick or two. You totally can for the right spot, the right move. And the Lions have actually done that to trade up. But, James, and this isn't just Kansas City I'm talking about, but good teams build through the draft and they stay sustained through the draft. And so far, Brad Holmes has done a pretty good job through the draft. So why would you want to put all your chips in to try and win the one hand? And maybe you do, but you also want to keep playing for a while too. So, what are your thoughts on some of that? Then I want to hear you, Coach.
Yeah, I think maybe people should listen to what Brad Holmes says. You can look at what he does, obviously, but what he's said over and over again is that we have a plan and we're not going to deviate from that plan, even though some people think that we're in some kind of imaginary window. We're looking to build sustained success where that window is open every year. And you don't do that by getting yourself in salary cap hell or trading away 2 or 3 first-round picks. Then you're closing the window in a couple years on yourself.
And James, you're right, because there's no guarantee. You're as Dan Campbell will say, that you're never one player away from winning the Super Bowl. And when you have to get to the postseason, and then there's a lot of luck in the postseason. Ask Coach; he's been on both sides of that luck, and so that goes exactly like you said, James. They want to be there every year to have a shot, and that's how you do it, is by sustained success.
Just like the New England Patriots. What big name free agents did you see the New England Patriots bringing in, aside from Randy Moss when he was pretty far down in his career? They didn't. They developed through the draft. They signed guys in free agency who were deals, and which is just what Brad Holmes is doing. Keep the window open for as long as possible. Don't shut it on yourself.
Coach, the approach, James and I kind of laid it out. Saw you nodding your head, kind of weigh in on it.
I agree. I mean, the thing is it's what does it mean that your Super Bowl window is open? Okay. Here's the thing: is we won the division 2 years in a row. We've improved every year since they've been there. Are we going to win 16 games next year in the regular season? Probably not. Could we possibly do it? We had, how many injuries did we have this year? And we still had 15 victories. Okay. And so that's the thing is, making these big splashes, you're not going to have these opportunities to pull guys here and there if this injury bug happens again. Knock on wood, I don't think it's going to happen. I can't believe, but we don't know. Could be on the opposite side, who knows. But the other thing too is let's look at San Francisco 49ers is a pretty good program, correct? I mean, in the last they've been to the championship 4 times, right? In the last 8 years, I think is correct. And in those 4 times that they didn't get to the championship, they didn't even make the playoffs because of injuries and because of things or because they had spent too much money. So you look at that thing, and with all the injuries we had, we still had 15-win season this year. And we're doing it with putting people into places that, were either cut from another team or, I'm going to go back to Meek Robinson again. He played freaking shutdown corner for us in week 18. Because he loves this program. He wants to be here forever, and I think that's the thing is. So let's not throw our money away to go get one guy and spend oodles and oodles of money, and then all of a sudden we can't keep Hutch around, we can't keep Branch around, we can't keep Joseph around, And I think they're doing it the right way. We are always going to be in the division race. We are always going to be in the playoff hunt. With these guys around, we aren't going to go back to saying, oh my God, it's going to be another 30 years before we win a division or another 20. It may be a year, but I don't see that in the future either, in the with the way they're doing it. So,
yeah, and Meek, when he played shutdown corner, he didn't just do it against anybody.
Yeah.
He did it against Justin Jefferson. And you know what? I think more than any free agent coming over to the Lions, I'm just excited to see all the defensive players that were hurt last year be healthy. And that's what we forget. We see, oh man, this defense needs to improve. No, just get the healthy guys back on the field, and you will see the level you saw in the first 5 weeks of the season. And so let's just bring them back. And you said it, Coach. They've improved every single year since they've got here.
Yeah.
Don't blow it up. There's no need to, make so many moves. Do you need to maybe get somebody on the defensive line? Yeah. Depending what you do as a Darius Smith and depending what Aleem McNeil's looking like, because I know that injury is going to take some time to come back from. Do you need some addressing in the secondary? Yeah, because you traded for Carlton Davis and you tried to extend him, and he said not yet. We'll see what happens with that now that he's had a whole season to play for the Lions. Re-examine the linebacking core, but that looks pretty good. So there'll be moves to make, but it's one of those things where, I just caution you, every time you see who says no, it's probably not worth your time or effort to even finish reading the headline. I'm just going to put that out there. The Lions are going to do the things the Lions do. And you know what? If it hadn't been working, maybe I'd criticize it a little bit more, but the record speaks for itself. So, all right. Well, that's kind of the show we got. We're going to, again, we'll do shows as news comes about, but it's going to be slow here for a little bit. Some upcoming important dates. The NFL Combine is in Indianapolis. That will be taking place at the end of February, starting February 24th. We'll possibly do something around that time. Again, kind of depends what's going on. Free agency officially hits in March, so we'll be doing that, and we'll take a look at the roster and the needs of that roster more as that time gets sooner. Coach, it's time to get out of here. Any final thoughts before we get going?
Nope, just keep doing what we're doing, and let's get those guys healthy and see what happens.
Sounds good. James, how about you?
Yeah, all those 16 guys from the defense that were on the disabled or on injured reserve last year, think of that as your free agent haul this year.
That's incredible. Yeah. Well put. Well, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. You can find more episodes and content at notthesameoldlions.com. Tell your friends and family about the show. Look for us on socials. You can find us on all major streaming platforms. Please subscribe regardless of which platform you choose. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.
Right now, get up to a $15 gift card after rebate when you purchase select Superstart batteries exclusively at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Oh, oh, oh. O'Reilly Auto Parts.